Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I am married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need. Oh, yeah. Hey, this is Carol the Coach, and I am so happy to be with you tonight. I am Carol Jurgensen-Sheets out of Indianapolis, Indiana, doing the only weekly show on sexual addiction in the country, in the world. And I was just talking to a newbie tonight, somebody that I actually have worked with for the first time, and he says, oh, no, wait, there's somebody else doing some sexual addiction show. And I said, oh, he or she does something weekly? And he goes, oh, no, he's just done about 5 or 6 podcasts. Well, I think that's fabulous. The more the merrier, but that is not a weekly show. And you can tune in every Monday night, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our show. And what I know to be true, because I download podcasts all the time, and what I know to be true is that most of us don't listen to podcasts when they come out. You know, it's not like you get on your computer, tune in, and turn on. Instead, what you do is you subscribe for free, you download the shows, they automatically happen, and then you play them at your leisure. That's probably one of the biggest benefits of Internet radio. I know that I play podcasts every morning when I exercise. So I'm always tuning into somebody. And some of my favorite podcasts are Jack Canfield. He's the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy. Unbelievable. Joe Vitale. He does The Attraction Factor. He's about getting exactly what you want. These are people that motivate me, and I hope that you'll listen to them too because they're amazing. And, of course, I'm so glad that you're listening to me. We're 300,000 downloads. So I know you're out there. Those were open downloads. So I know you're out there, and I know you're opening up podcasts. And I tell my listeners and my clients, hey, just scroll down, look for the ones that specifically speak to you. If you're a partner, look for that. If you're a female sex addict, look for those. If you're a male sex addict, look for those. If you're looking for something more intensive, look, because my title kind of tells it all. It'll tell you, are you looking for more intensive treatment with Carol the Coach? Or is there really such a thing as female sex addiction with Carol the Coach? Or Sex Addiction 101, which means, hey, you're just a newbie and you're trying to figure out, do I have this illness? Is it made up? What's going on? So I am encouraging you to download on iTunes the entire series and pick the podcasts that speak to you. Now, I got to tell you, anybody who's ever listened to me knows that I feel very, very, very blessed. I am so happy to be doing this. I do regular radio, and I love it. And so getting on the Internet and speaking to people all over the world, it makes my heart feel good because I know that this is an illness of shame, blame, and pain. And I also know that it's hard to get on the air and talk about your issues. So I want to encourage you to send me an email at carolthecoach@AOL.com and to encourage me to talk about specific things. For instance, this week I got an email that said, "Hey, Carol, I recently faced my sexual addiction, and I'm now working my recovery program." And he says with a CSAT therapist, 12-step meetings, he's doing the Facing the Shadows workbook. I got to tell you, that is absolutely the best workbook ever. I've got a sponsor. I'm doing my reading. I'm listening to your podcast. However, I'm only in the beginning stages. Then he says, one of the things I'd like for you to do, Carol, is talk about fetishes. When I grew up with what I thought was a fantasy, I fetished for cashmere and Angora sweaters for almost as long as I can remember. I remember getting a really strong feeling of excitement when I would see a woman in a soft sweater or see a picture of a woman. I would fantasize about her, and I would imagine what it was like to be fantasizing and feeling her in those sweaters. He says, I found the electricity I would get from the soft, luxurious sweaters was more than I could kinesthetically take. Now, I don't want to go into too much because I don't want to trigger you if you have this kind of fetish, but I meet with lots of people that have sweater fetishes. They've got lycra fetishes. They've got hosiery fetishes. This is not that unusual. This man says, I've tried wearing those sweaters, and it feels very, very good. He also says that he has obviously felt a lot of secrecy, and he hasn't known who to talk to about this. And, what I've got to say is this is not that unusual, but he says, why? Why am I this way, and could you please do a show on fetishes? So what I've done is I've reached out to my listserv of over 1,600 professionals, other CSATs, and I've asked, does anybody have some real expertise on this issue? What I want to tell you is that oftentimes there is something that has kinesthetically happened. That means the feeling. There's something that you've bonded to early on in your childhood that reminded you of cashmere sweaters. Maybe it was your mother's sweater. Maybe it was a babysitter's sweater. Maybe it was your aunt's sweater. And that feeling of that sweater linked up with your arousal template. It linked up with your sense of safety. And when you have those two kind of combinations, it can anchor you for the rest of your life. And if anybody knows neurolinguistic programming, they know that clearly we are dominated by what we see, what we feel, what we taste, what we smell, and what we hear. So for somebody who has a cashmere fetish or a lycra fetish or a hosiery fetish, it has to do more often than not with our early childhood upbringing. Now, that in and of itself is not wrong or bad by any means. But if you've got the kind of brain that becomes compulsive, it can end up guiding and directing your life. Certainly you may go out and buy these kind of clothes, and if you're a man, putting on a cashmere sweater for a woman can make you feel like a cross-dresser. Or if you're somebody who really likes Lycra, you may want to put on your wife's Lycra jogging pants. And obviously you feel deviant because you're keeping it a secret. You're not sharing that with anybody. You kind of lead a double life, and you actually become a slave to it. This person actually even had to sell IRA shares to pay for the sweaters that he had overbought. So, I mean, when it becomes that compulsive, it becomes a problem. And this man says, my wife is devastated. She's really struggling with healing. She has gotten rid of all the sweaters, and I have promised her that I will stop this niche. But what this person knows is that it feels like a void in his life. So, we'll call him Steve. Steve says, I really have been enjoying your podcast. I've only gone through the first 6 or 7 and looked on the others. And I wanted so badly to ask you if you would do something on this because I'm not finding much literature or I'm not finding much material on the Internet. Can you help? So, like I said, I put this out there. We'll see what I can dig up. And just know there's never a question that's too personal. If you've got this issue, I guarantee you there are at least hundreds of other people that listen to the show that have a very, very similar issue. And there's never anything that you can bring up that brings any shame, blame, or pain to me. I will definitely take it seriously, and I'll do my very, very best to help you. I got another email this week that said, Hey, Carol, my name is Tom, and I'm a recovering sex addict. I've been listening to your program for a very long time, and I consider it as an important part in my ongoing recovery. Thank you, Tom. I want to be a part of your recovery. I want to be, I want to be available to you just in the same way as a book, a magazine, and any other kind of healthy reading literature. He says, I'm contacting you today really to commit myself to emailing you later my complete story. I have intended to for a long time. It is a long and detailed one that is so similar to many others, but it also contains components that are uncommon. In fact, some areas that I have not heard addressed before. Anyway, I'm sitting outside my SA 12-step meeting, which is about to begin, but I did want to let you know that I promise I want to share with you my story, and hopefully you and I can talk so that I can inspire others to get healthy. And, again, that's what it's all about. It's not just about me. It's not just about my guests. It's also about my listening audience. And you are as equally important as any of us. And so if you want to share your story, you can email me at carolthecoach@AOL.com. If you wonder if you have a sex addiction, you can take the SAST on my website, and that's Sex Help with Carol the Coach. And at any point, you can email me through my website, and I'll be more than happy to get you to the right place or ask you to come on the show and talk about your situation, because that's what we do. I am here to help educate you and to be a support, because there just aren't enough support situations out there for you yet. You've heard me say it before, there are all sorts of pioneers in this field. And so what I want you to know is that you're not alone in working through this very difficult problem. I've said it before, the literature certainly substantiates sex addiction is a process addiction, and what that means is that you very clearly are dealing with an addiction that is much more difficult than stopping smoking, caffeine, alcohol, or drugs. When you have a process addiction, that means that this is something that is occurring in your life today that you will have to deal with on a daily basis and be surrounded by. Just like an eating disorder can be an addiction, and you have to eat, so you got to figure out how to manage it. It's the same way with sex. If you're in a relationship, you absolutely need to know how to deal and manage in a sexual relationship. Now, that brings me to an interesting topic, and that topic is sexuality. I'm here to tell you that if you are in treatment, it may be that your therapist has asked you to sign a celibacy contract. And what that means is that when you first come clean with your addiction and you are working on trying to figure out how to improve your relationship and get healthy, your therapist or your treatment center may want you to take sex off the table. And that means no masturbation, and if you're in a partnership, no sex for a while. That's important. So how do we do that? How do you actually practice a celibacy contract? Well, the first thing I want to say is that oftentimes what that means is that you sign a contract that says, you know what, I will do whatever it takes to decrease my sexual acting out. No masturbation, no sexual activity, no sexual stimulation, and I will do it for 30, 90, even 180 days until I have calmed down the brain, my reward center in the brain. And when I talk about the reward center, what I mean by this is that oftentimes, we know that sexual addiction is an illness of the brain. And to calm it down means that you do whatever it takes to deactivate it initially so that it calms down, so that you can begin then to decide what are healthy behaviors that you can integrate into your life and not trigger you. What is a trigger? Well, a trigger is when you are activated by a certain sound, smell, feeling, or picture in your brain. They talk about when you're intimate with somebody, when you have a partner and you're working on your sexuality, you need to work on your intimacy. And the most typical form of intimacy is open eye sex. That means you keep your eyes open and you stay very present with the person that you're having sex with because you love them, because you want to get closer to them, because you want to stay connected to them. What does that mean? That means that you don't fantasize about other people, places, and things. And so open eye sex is a very healthy form of communication with somebody you love. Now, you may say, well, Carol, what about recreational sex? Is that okay? I'm not here to say whether recreational sex is okay for the general public. That's your choice. That's your decision. However, what I know is that if you're a sex addict, you probably need to abstain from sex unless you're in a committed relationship, because recreational sex to a single person is the gateway to sexual addiction. Now, I don't mean in any way, shape, or form that average people who don't have sex addiction can't have recreational or sex. I don't mean that. But if you're a sex addict and you are not in a loving, committed relationship, and you end up having recreational sex with somebody, oftentimes that will lead to other forms of sex that are not so healthy. Now, if you're in that committed relationship, of course you're not supposed to be having recreational sex. Okay, now, I may have a few listeners that are polyamorous, and that means that they believe in having sex with lots of people and relationships with lots of people, and that is agreed upon by all parties. There's no secrets. There's no isolation. There's no manipulation. It is what it is. To be honest, I have to tell you, I've worked with many a polyamorous person who's having some sort of difficulty either in their relationship or within themselves. And we're not necessarily sex addicts. But I've never had a polyamorous sex addict. So I can't speak to how I might guide them. I'm sure I would do that in the exact same way as I do anybody else. That's what I believe to be true. So I just want to, again, encourage you, if you have a question, contact me at carolthecoach@AOL.com. You can send me an email, and I will be more than happy to answer your question and find out the resources that you may need to get you further into your treatment. Okay, this is Carol the Coach. Who do I have on the phone?
Hi, this is Joshua.
Hi, Joshua. What question do you have for me today?
Actually, I have a little bit of an addiction question, two-part. First of all, my girlfriend and I have been dating now for, I'd say, about a year and a half, and she is actually my ex-girlfriend's daughter, which has created a lot of problems. And
how old is she?
12. She's 12.
Yeah, that would cause a lot of problems because obviously, Joshua, you cannot date somebody who's under your age. And so I suspect if you are interested in somebody younger than your age, by the degree that they are a child, you need to get some serious help. And I know very clearly that can be sexual exploitive disorder. And that is one of the 10 types of sexual addiction. And so what I would encourage you to do is find a CSAT in your area, and you can go to sexhelp.com, and you can look up via your zip code who is a CSAT that is closest to you. And if there is nobody available to you, then clearly what I want you to do is to look for a CSAT that you can Skype and that you can get the resources that you need to. Because it can be very, very difficult to deal with an attraction that you may have towards younger children. And yet, let's face it, we got to report that. So it's very tough. It is very tough to be able to talk about that and feel like you're not going to get reported. Matter of fact, Joshua, one of the things that occurred with me a couple of weeks ago is that I had a younger guy. He was actually 15, and he shared that he had taken advantage of his 6-year-old cousin. And he asked me ahead of time. He said, "Hey, do I have to report that?" And I said, "Yes, I do have to report it. So I want you to know whatever you tell me that has to do with an underage minor, I will have to report. But you know what? I want you to get the help that you need. A, because it feeds your addiction, and this young man had an addiction to porn. And 2, I knew that if he didn't share that with me, this could become compulsive. And it hadn't been. It was a one-time thing. So he shared it with me, and I reported it, It's called a 310. I reported it with Child Protection Services. And then what I shared with his mother, and his father was that clearly if he stayed in treatment and he got help, and it was a one-time thing, it wasn't an ongoing situation with lots of kids, that really what Child Protection Service and the police department want to know is that he's getting some help. Now, here's the deal. He does not necessarily have a sexual addiction. Does not have a sexual addiction necessarily if he's been with somebody for sexual exploration. Sexual addiction is about obsession and compulsion. That means is that very clearly, if you can't stop being with somebody underage, or you can't stop looking at porn, or you can't stop going to prostitutes, whatever the issue is, that then becomes something that we need to assess for sexual addiction. If it's a one-time situation, you took advantage of somebody, you exploited them, it does not mean you have exploited sexual addiction. All right, good question. And if you have a question, you can give me a call at 646-595-3284. 646-595-3284. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Because let's face it, you can't get on the internet and talk about these things with just anybody. And, via the radio, via the internet, it's so important for you to feel free to talk about anything you want. And at the same time, it's similar. If you get on the radio and you tell me that you have raped somebody or there's been some sort of exploitive sexual disorder going on, and I have your phone number, guess what? I got to report you. So I just want you to know that up front. I want to help you, but I also want to protect society. That's what it's all about. And we just had this big dialogue. We had this dialogue with our CSATs because somebody felt like they needed to report something. Obviously, I just reported something, and it can provide turmoil. We like our clients, and if they share something with us that's illegal, it can feel like a betrayal to them to report them, and yet what we know is we don't want to enable that behavior if it's unsafe to somebody else. And all states are different, but definitely in Indiana, I have to report that because my main objective is to keep everybody safe. My second objective is to help whoever needs the help. So that's an important issue for you to know about in case, for some reason, you have a compulsion to be with underage people, especially children. You've heard me talk about Jared Fogle, and I just did another segment last week. Obviously, Dr. Phil had on one of the victims/survivors. I like to call them survivors because they're going to get stronger, hopefully, as a result of all this trauma. And when those kind of things occur, it's my opportunity to say, hey, sexual addiction is a lot of different things. It's not just this thing. And no matter what the addiction, because there are 10 types, if somebody goes to 12-step meetings and they have a sponsor and they call fellowship and they come see a CSAT and they go to group and they read and they journal and they pray and they meditate and they put proper filters on their phone, they're going to make it. If they're doing all that, I just saw somebody today. I said, I want you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And he said, 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't have that kind of time. And I said, you know what? You don't have the time not to. Your addiction is severe enough that that's what it's going to take. And then I looked at him and I said, the average person that comes in here, I say I want you to go to 3 to 5 meetings a week. And I'm telling you, I want you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. That is diagnostic. That is important for you to know. And I'm not backing down on that because I want you to get healthy. I think you can clearly understand why I would do that. It's not a punishment. It's actually what I believe will help to get them the most assistance that they can. And, boy, I know it can be rough. I absolutely know that to be true. And yet you are worth it. The investment that you make in yourself will be tenfold. You know, you've heard me say this before. How do you actualize your potential and live the best life possible? Well, let me just give you a little rundown on how I live my life. And do I think I do a good job? Yes, I do. You know, I'm married, don't have kids, would love to have kids, but am too old at this point. By the way, thank you to many of you who figured out I turned 60 a couple weeks ago. And what I know to be true is that to live your best life, to actualize your potential takes work. So I work 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7, right? I take off 10 weeks a year for vacation. How do I do that? I work lots of weekends to make up the time, or I work extra hours during the week, so that even though I get 10 weeks off, I've already put in probably 5 or 6 extra weeks of hours. So I don't really get 10 weeks off. I get the 10 weeks off, but I've already put in the hours, so okay, that may average 3 to 4 weeks, which is a big blessing. I'm not here to brag. I'm telling you that I work on orchestrating and navigating and designing and developing my life so that it meets my needs. I get up at 5 because I go to work at 8. Spend an hour doing some spiritual or inspirational reading. I then go and work out for 45 minutes every single day. I get up in the morning, I go directly to the closet, and I put on my workout clothes. I do that so that I will work out. If I didn't do that, I could talk myself out of it. Even though I love exercise, I create an infrastructure that supports me, that gets me to do what I need to do. Then I get ready for work, go into work my hours, come home, I work hard, and I play hard. I have an active social life. I do a lot of date nights with my husband. I have an animal, a dog, my dog Boo, who I adore. And I spend time connecting with my friends. Over half of them are in recovery. They are either recovering alcoholics, recovering drug addicts. And, you know, what you are learning from my show is that a lot of addicts have multiple addictions. Certainly with sex addiction, you could have multiple addictions. Very often, sex addiction is actually tied with workaholism. You know, business owners who work nonstop relax and rejuvenate with sexual addiction, which is an oxymoron because, you know, that may be what they initially did to medicate and isolate, and yet what that did was turn into another obsession and compulsion that ended up running their lives. But my point is that I have designed my life to be amazing. And I designed my work week to work for me. Now, what does that mean? I don't know if you all would do this, but on Mondays, I work from 8 to 5. Then I have my group from 5 to 6:30. Groups are intensive. They take a lot of your energy. I get home by 7. Well, that's not really true. Probably 6:45 because my work is 5 minutes from my home. Why? Because I hate to drive. I don't want to spend 30 to 45 minutes driving to and from work. Okay, so I've orchestrated my life so that my work is very close to my home. Then I have a couple hours off, and I do this radio show. So tonight I'm working until 10 o'clock at night. the point I'm trying to prove is that I allow Mondays to be my toughest work day, my longest work day, and then I coast the rest of the week. Now, some people might not want to lean into the beginning of the week working that hard, but I actually like that so that I can coast the rest of the week. Think about what you would like. Think a lot about what decreases your stress. It's all about stress management, and that is so important. Think about how you can spend a little bit more time either dating, because you're a single person, or with your husband or wife, because you are in a committed relationship. And what can you do to spend a little individual time with your friends? What is it that you need to do? How do you need to go about doing that? You know, it can be so very difficult to know what to do to make your life easier. And I promise you, if you spend some time in contemplation and reflection, that may look like meditation. You will find out what it is you actually need to do to make your life better. That quiet time is the dictator for what works the best. And so I cannot highlight enough how important it is for you to find healthy outer circle behaviors that support the life that you want. Now, for some of you in the program, you know what the 3 circles are. The 3 circles are your treatment plan. In SAA, in the Green Book, in Sex Addicts Anonymous, there are these 3 circles. And if you can imagine 3 concentric circles inside of each other, the outside circles are the healthy circle behaviors. For me, that's exercising. Yesterday, I worked out with weights before I went to work, and I'm working on Sundays because I'm making up some time because I'm taking off some holiday time. And then I came home and I rollerbladed. Okay, I don't know how smart that is. I'm 60 years old, and my doctor has said my bones are not necessarily the strongest, but I love to rollerblade. I go and get my dog, and we rollerblade probably about a block and back. And I put him in the house. I play my favorite music videos, or I listen to inspirational podcasts, and I rollerblade for about 45, 50 minutes. I go about 12 miles. You know, it makes me feel young. I love that activity. I called my girlfriend. Okay, so now I've worked out with weights. I've rollerbladed, and I called my girlfriend. I said, hey, you want to go kayaking? It was Sunday. She loves football. I don't. She said no go. But I tried. And so do you have people that will exercise with you? Maybe go biking, maybe go blading, maybe go canoeing, maybe go walking, go to the gym. I know you may be sitting there going, there is no way in hell that I'm going to want to exercise. I want to rest on the weekends. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. Well, I got to tell you, in terms of healthy circle behaviors, exercise will rejuvenate you and will give you more energy. So that's one healthy behavior. Now, dating is a healthy behavior if it's with a committed partner or if it's done out of sex. You know, if you are finding like-minded people to intellectually share with, emotionally share with. But clearly, if you're a sex addict, unless you've been in recovery for a while, you better take sex out of it. There's no reason to get activated. Do you participate in your kids' baseball games, softball games, volleyball games, football games? You know, are you coaching their team? Are you being a booster mom? What are you doing? You know, do you have some quiet time? I could not live in the morning if I didn't have some quiet time. my husband isn't up. It's just me and my puppy, and we're just hanging out together, reading. And, it just gives me time to pause, because what I do for a living is pretty stressful. And so I very clearly need that time just to rejuvenate. Then let's look at middle circle behaviors. Middle circle behaviors for sex addicts are those behaviors that are slippery slopes. Are you somebody that when you bring in the mail and you see the Victoria's Secret catalog, you are destined to want to browse it? That's not healthy. Are you somebody who, when you look at ESPN, you look at the bottom of the screen and you check out the cheerleaders for the Colts? That's not healthy behaviors. There's no way a sex addict who has not been in long-term recovery can look at a cheerleader who's scantily clad and not objectify them and not have sexual fantasies. It is what it is. So don't even begin to fool yourself, because step one, task number one, that Patrick Carnes talks about, and he is the guru of sexual addiction. He helped to write SAA. He has written over 20 books. He certainly trained me, and he will tell you the first task in working with a sex addict is breaking denial. And you have every reason to hate, angry, and to be mad about the alteration of your relationships and your schedule. But guess what? You can't do what normal people do. But if you focus on that, you'll have nothing but resentment and you won't live a good program. If you think about all the ways that this healthy program is going to make your life better and enrich you, you'll feel a lot of gratitude and a lot of happiness. And I hope that as I share this with you, you will say to yourself, oh my gosh, I've heard Carol talk about this many a time. When you're in sexual addiction recovery and you're in the beginning of it, it's easy to be resentful, angry, and to be disgusted with the fact that your life has to change. But clearly and totally, what I promise is that you have the capability to decide that happiness is a choice. And by happiness, I mean that you get to decide that you are going to make your life better. And this is for anybody out here. Certainly this is for partners too. Partners are so activated and they're so afraid that their loved one is not going to get the help he or she needs, that they can become hypervigilant and they can want to micromanage the other person, and they actually work triple time, way worse than the addict. And so the formula for happiness has to do with three things. They interviewed 20,000 people who came from all sorts of backgrounds that proclaimed happiness, and all 20,000 of them identified these three goals. They said, one, we stay in the moment. We live in the present. And isn't that a 12-step principle? One day at a time. So they stay in the moment. They don't worry about the past. They do not perseverate about the future. They just stay in the moment, because if you stay in the moment, you'll do the next right thing. Secondly, they have the attitude of gratitude. They ask themselves, what is working in my life? What's going right? They don't focus on all the things that they no longer get to participate in. Oh, the fact that they can't get on the internet and they can't look at porn. Oh, the fact that they're no longer going to adult friend finders and seeing the newest and greatest person who probably is not real. They focus on, wow, my life's better. I'm developing a healthier relationship with my wife or my husband. My kids and I are relating and reacting. I'm doing better work. I'm no longer stealing hours. either from my sleep or my work day. So they're focusing on what is working and what is going well. Very, very, very important stuff. Then, the next thing that they're doing is they are reframing. They're looking at their life, they're seeing the struggles, they're seeing the challenges, they're seeing the problems, they're seeing the issues, and they're saying, okay, these things are real, but how am I growing stronger, and what am I learning from them? So they're taking themselves out of the victim role, and they are very clearly, they're saying, what do I have to learn from them? And when they do that, wow, not only are they looking at life lessons, but they also are very clearly growing from them. And wow, that makes a great difference. Do you get how that works? That's the coach in me. I am Carol the coach, and I work diligently on motivating and inspiring you to be your best person. If you have a question, you can feel free to give me a call at 646-595-3284. 646-595-3284. And I cannot encourage you enough just to give us a call. I know it's anonymous, and nobody's going to know your voice. This is a tough show to call because you don't want to out yourself as a sex addict. I get that. But just as my last caller did, it allows me to give you some tips and tools, and that's what the show's all about. Now, what I really want to emphasize in this work is if you want a workbook that can change your life, that is Facing the Shadows. It's a wonderful workbook that helps you to recognize that you are a sex addict and helps you to decide what you can do to get healthier. It's written by Dr. Patrick Carnes, and I swear to you, I've trained with this man. This book is like he is sitting in your living room talking to you. I cannot recommend it enough. And I would go to Gentle Path. That is his publishing site, and I would buy the book from him. Okay? So, again, that's Facing the Shadows, and the publishing company is Gentle Path. Carol sent you. And then if you're wanting a recovery start kit, something to get you going, you really should be working with the CSAT on this, a certified sexual addictions therapist. But there's something called the Recovery Start Kit, and it is amazing. And it helps you to recognize your addict and how your addict works to absolutely and positively move you away from your goals, move you away from your recovery. The addict probably at one point was your friend, and now he has or she has turned on you. So this Recovery Start Kit gets you to do these core dialogue queries where you actually talk to your addict, and then you work on breaking the denial and understanding the sexual addiction and making yourself safe physically and emotionally. It is just a wonderful tool for changing your life. I can't emphasize it enough. And if you've been working with a therapist or a sexual addictions therapist for a while, if you're working with a certified sexual addictions therapist and you just don't think you're making headway, then I believe you need to go to a workshop, an intensive outpatient program, or you need to do residential treatment. And there are great treatment centers all over the country. The Meadows, Pine Grove, The Ranch, Elements, Healthy for Center Living. I mean, they're out there, and there are a million of them. So email me. I'll send you one closest to your home so that you can minimize your costs. When I was getting my training, I would have loved to have gone out to California to do my CSAT training. But, I'm a Midwest girl, and I wanted to very clearly I wanted to minimize my costs, so I went to Tennessee because I could drive there 5 hours and get there and use my car and not have to do airline flights, and it was just amazing. So I cannot emphasize enough, I'll get you to the closest place. I'll get you to the best intensive program. I'll get you to the finest workshop in the country. And if I don't know a certain workshop, I'll send it out to my listserv of over 1,600 certified sexual addiction therapists. And I have never, ever been so challenged in all my life as to work with these folks because they take it seriously. You know, I mean, they know their stuff. They've written books. They've written manuals. They've put together programming. They don't take it lightly. So you just let me know what you need. And it's kind of like I'm going to be your new best friend. I'm going to help you through this. We can do this together. I cannot do Skype sessions. You know, I don't know anybody who can actually do individual sessions. But what I can promise you is if you need to consult with me, we can Skype. I can get you to the right resources. I can get you the right tools. You know, I can spend 5, 6, 10 sessions with you consulting. And then you can get the most help possible if there's nobody in your area that can do that for you. I've helped men in the military. I've helped women who had nowhere else to go. I work all over the world. You know, would you believe there's no certified sexual addictions therapists in Belize? And I can do some marital work in helping you and your partner to know where to go, what books to read, and what workshops to attend. I work with as many partners as I do therapists. So there is help out there for you. You've found me already. You've been smart enough either to research Blog Talk Radio and Sex Help with Carol the Coach, or you've gone on iTunes and you've searched for sexual addiction and you found my show. So don't hesitate to take your life to the next level and get more intensive help. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now, hopefully, we're going to be talking about unchaining your brain from sexual addiction and compulsive sexual behaviors in the future. And I did have a woman scheduled for tonight, and I don't know what happened. You know, sometimes people forget, sometimes things come up. But I hope to have her on in the future to talk about these diagnostic tests where you can actually get a SPECT scan and, she specifically works with Dr. Daniel Amen. I don't know. He is like the brain guru, at least to the West Coast. And she also talks about things like amino acid therapy and family of origin trauma therapy and how you can really work on unchaining your brain from sexual addiction and compulsive sexual behaviors. So I do hope to have her on in the next couple of weeks. And now I'm going to look at my appointment book and tell you who's going to be on next week. Because next week we have a sexual addictions therapist, Philip Wang, who is going to be talking about how he works with couples in sexual addiction. And then after Thanksgiving, we actually have a hypnosis expert who uses hypnosis to help sexual addicts. And we had her booked for earlier in the season, and you know what? For whatever reason, we lost the internet connection in New York. It was during one of the storms. So I am really looking forward to some of the guests that we have who are going to be talking about resiliency and Brene Brown's work, Daring to Be Great. and lesbian sex addiction, what that's like, in the lesbian community to have a sexual addiction. There is nothing that we don't work on. So, I will work on that fetish thing and see if I can't find an expert in fetishes. And I just so appreciate you listening to the show. You're listening to Sex Help with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets. You can go to my website, Sex Help with Carol the Coach, or you can go to the big website, sexhelp.com, Dr. Patrick Harn's website, and take the tests that you need to determine whether you have a problem. And as I say at the end of every show, there will only be one of you at all times. So I fearlessly want you to have the courage to be yourself. And that's what it's all about. Be yourself, be authentic, be transparent, and let's work together to make your life one that you're proud of. I'll see you next week. Talk to you soon.